Hi, I'm Victor Vogel. I have a program called Renaissance Leadership Podcast, and I host that podcast on a regular basis every month. You can find it on my YouTube channel called Building Renaissance Leaders. Tonight, I want to talk about positive intelligence. This is a question and answer podcast series that I do where I basically respond to questions and comments from previous podcasts, usually in that same month. Sometimes I wait a little longer till I get more questions and do them later, which I have on this one. I've gotten some questions relative to positive intelligence and the role it plays with um, the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey program. So we're going to address those questions. Now, what I've done is I've get these questions from social media, they come from emails, they come from a phone line I have. They come from a lot of different places. And when I get these questions, I kind of look at them and then I try to consolidate them down where I answer the four most frequent questions or the questions that are similar. In this case, we're going to answer the question, what the hell is positive intelligence? Where did that come from? And so we're going to talk a little bit about my experiences over 40 years and kind of where I might have seen this start creeping in, where it became posited as a positive thinking concept or established as a positive thinking concept back in the mid 1990s. And then on to what it is today, positive intelligence, which is really a program put together by Shirzad Chamine, and I like that program. It's a highly evidence-based program, high quality, a lot of research behind it, and well thought out, and it is available. So I don't have to design it. You don't have to go look for it. It's right there. It's available to you, and it's going to provide something, frankly, that we have missed for over 4 decades of leadership development. It's exciting for me to say that. We can really get into that. I'm not even sure Shazad is using it as pointed as I am in my program, but certainly it offers what you need right now for future leaders. So that's one of the questions. I think the other question was, how do I go about discovering what I need to know in positive intelligence? How does that program work? So there is a podcast back in March I did with Dr. Grossman. He's a psychologist, and he sort of explained what he says. And what I am going to do is I'm going to offer you a look here in just a minute about where to go and how to find it, etc. And then I'll leave a couple of recommendations of some names. I mentioned those, and I'll also put them in the comments so you can reach them, how you reach them. They are certified positive intelligence coaches, so they can take you from an individual perspective or a whole corporation perspective. So if you're interested in doing that. So uh, the third question is, how does that fit in with your program, the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey? What's going on here with that? We're going to cover that question so that you can understand why I chose it and how it fits with some other programs I have in place. But so we'll answer that question, and then I think it lastly is where can I find out more and find out assistance on how to do that. We're going to cover those things. So let's do that. Let's take a look at why positive intelligence, what it is, and why it's important that you become trained as positive intelligence. So, positive intelligence. What is it? What's its history? Now that I look back over my 40 years, it's not something that hasn't been lurking in people's minds. I think they just haven't been able to define it and provide the evidence to support it as much. I remember back in the 1970s, I didn't bump into him, I discovered two gentlemen who were working at Michigan State University on the topic of leadership and performance and those issues. And their names were French and Raven. They were doing this work at the University of Michigan, and they were professors there. And they had labs, and they were doing a lot of research work about how leaders perform and which leaders seem to get the most out of their people. And that was back in 1956 when they were doing that. So I'm discovering this in 1970s. It's still prominent today. They said leaders had five power bases they operated from, and then they compared leaders that operated these different power bases against your standard criterion of measurement for corporate evaluation, job satisfaction, employee engagement, quality of product, quantity of product, efficiency, cost of product, all those kinds of measurements that you would look at if you were running a good corporation and you wanted to see how your leaders were impacting the corporation. So they did this and they were very successful at this. All the correlations were coming out well. And the power bases that French and Raven developed were called expert, referent, legitimate, coercive, and reward power bases. And three of those turned out to be power bases that delivered far better performance than the others. One was expert, one was referent, and one was reward. And so basically those three things together, but primarily the two that proved to be the most impactful were the expert and reference power bases. And expert kind of speaks for itself. The person was competent at doing their job and knew the job well, and the employees knew that. And the other one had to do with referent, which was a likable, trusting person they felt comfortable going to, they could learn from. Those were the kind of dynamics that they referred to as a reference power base. So compared to what was called coercive. Coercive and legitimate were seen as negative power bases versus the others, which were perceived as positive. And they were that way because people would just use their title and the name tag and the position to lord over, and or the coercive was to withhold pay or fire people, or just a significant authoritarian approach to leadership in those two. So even back then, we were beginning to see the difference between positive leadership and negative leadership. And then as we entered into 1980s, in the early 1980s, when Warren Bennis, I think he was at the University of Southern California, he and a guy by the name of Bert Nannis published a book called Leaders, and in there were some uh, chapters on trust. And in trust, they were saying that's the most important aspect that leaders need to have a handle on in order to lead people effectively. And they were talking about things like compassion and competency and consistency. And I call it congruent. So that it has a communication context to it, but it was basically things aligned. They did what they said they were going to do, and and the other one, let's see, congruency, passion, and consistency were the four things. Consistency proved out to be very important because actually what employees could do when leaders are consistent, even if they didn't have compassion, they could predict the leader, and therefore that predictability made them actually feel pretty comfortable. I tell a story about that where um, I was doing a chemical plant and I was talking with the leader of that plant, and particularly a segment of the line. And there was some concern about that leader, and they felt he was abusive almost, certainly aggressive in his leadership style. But when we surveyed them, we found that to be the case, but we also found out that they had a high satisfaction level. And come to find out, although he didn't have compassion, he 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 was consistent, and he was someone who he sort of led with a what I call a gruff approach to things. It wasn't that he didn't care; it's his language was gruff, but and the way he thought, the way he grew up, was one that you push people to help them get better, and that pushing was aggressive. Uh, and so in that kind of environment, what was going on, I mean, he was the kind of leader that he would send you, if you were sick, he would send some food to your house. And when you got the note from the food, it would say something like, why the hell aren't you at work? But then it was a really full meal for his whole family. So, I mean, there was some inconsistency about he was doing that, and that's what we were going to work on with him. But he had the basic compassion and heart. He just showed it differently than other people. His employees knew that because he was consistent in what he did. So that went a long ways to helping us solve that problem. But anyway, even in the 80s and going into the 90s, there was a sense of the importance of treating people well, caring about them. We were beginning to break down a little bit the syndrome. Don't talk about your personal life at work. You have to know your people in order to effectively lead them. So you can't leave that out. You have to be able to sense when they're having trouble at home or there's difficulties or something like that. So in the 1990s, the mid 1990s, a guy by the name of Segelman, he was a professor of psychology, he was one of the guys and some of his associates who are beginning to talk about positive thinking. You get your mindset. This is where positive mindset and positive thinking were beginning to birth out of him and several other people in that area. And from that, the people began to work on positive intelligence. The more they worked on that, the more they saw things like values and culture and those kinds of things play an element in that. But the behaviors associated were centered around empathy and caring and concern. And so that evolved in the 1990s and early 2000s into what we call emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence really took off. A guy by the name of Daniel Goleman was a Harvard trained psychologist, but he was actually a newspaper reporter for a paper up in Chicago, interestingly enough. So he was doing a lot of writing about the success of this so-called emotional intelligence and the people who were promoting it. So he took that and ran with it, began to formulate it into a model. And as a psychologist, he could do that fairly readily. And he started doing that, and it caught on. And so, although I don't think he invented it, he's known as the father of emotional intelligence. I don't think he invented it. This is several years back now. But I do think he popularized it. To hear him talk, he says, I didn't invent it, I popularized it. I made it famous, so to speak. And from that, things took off. And then, of course, he picked up, and that is the drive of his business now is Daniel Goleman's Positive Intelligence. And the second of three pillars that I recommend people master and become part of, and we'll have a separate session dealing with that. So that all of that began to come about, and then around, I don't know, somewhere around 2016, 17, 19, somewhere in there, neuroscience began to come into play. And from 2000 on, they have had evolved what was called MRI machines. So they could put a little pads on your head, sensing pads on your head, and they could put people in a machine, it's called an MRI machine, and ask them questions. And that MRI machine would transfer the neuron signals into, and the software for the MRI would convert it into an image of the brain and all the parts of the brain. And they could begin to see what parts of the brain were lighting up when people were feeling really good, really high, and when they were sad and miserable. And you could begin to see what parts of the brain were operating when their behaviors and their discussion were centered around, and their feelings were centered around those behaviors. So people begin to realize, hey, look, I can show somebody a picture of something that makes them sad, and this sets off this part of the brain. Well, what was happening as they discovered more and more, and this became more sophisticated, it's very sophisticated now, uh, they were beginning to find out that the brain basically is attached to the nervous system, which is attached with, or it's not attached, it's within the body, but it is also attached to several parts of the body. And that the process is the brain is where your thinking and your ideas and everything formulate, and your nervous system is how you deliver those feelings to the rest of your body. But it's also where the body perceives a certain situation through your senses, through your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your hearing, all the touch, yeah, all of these senses are at work. And all of them have neurons that are tied to your brain, attached to whatever cells are associated with your senses. So as you're sensing something, it goes from those receptors into your nervous system and then on up to your brain. And that part of the brain that's associated with processing whatever you're sensing becomes highlighted and active. So, uh, if it's something that's fearful, it'll ignite, a certain part of your brain. You see something fearful, or you hear a loud noise that's fearful that you associate with danger, that's recorded in your brain. And it's reoccurs, and it causes senses in your body to react, or send signals through your nervous system to your body so that you react appropriately. So there's a need for that kind of sensing and fear side of it. But they also found that when you were happy or you were joyous or things seemed calm and relaxed, that another part of the brain was also sensing that information about the external outside world. Or if they were sleeping, they could sense that there was a calmness or something that's going on. So your body wasn't excited or wasn't sensing other external factors that affected it. So all of these kinds of things were being discovered, and basically it comes down to the fact that you have in your mind, your nervous system, and your body are basically reacting in terms so that they're aligned, and your heartbeat picks up when you get afraid. Your blood goes to the center of your body if you fear being shot or threatened to restrict the blood flow. A lot of things happen like that. Kind of, you don't understand that they're happening because you don't study it. They just happen. So it's kind of if you're in a store, if you go to a department store or something, you're standing in line, you've had a bad day. I think I heard Andrew Huberman express this way on one of his podcasts. He says, if you've had a bad day and you're standing in line, the person in front of you is taking forever to go through the cashier and the cash register and all that, you can feel yourself tightening up, your body's tightening up, and your lips are pursed, and you can feel the sensation of anger and frustration, and the person just keeps going there now. Right. What's happened is you're misaligned with your environment, your external environment. The external environment's calm, collective, working like it's supposed to. This lady is just presenting different credit cards because she has to. She's a senior citizen. Maybe she has to give a food card and a regular card, and then one doesn't work because she's low on money, so she has to give another one. So those kinds of things are going on. But you've had a bad day. You're in a hurry. You're frustrated. You're angry, and you look at it the wrong way, and your reaction may come out, wish the hell you'd hurry up to this lady who's really done nothing to you, and sometimes no fault of her own is having to deal with this problem of how she pays. And then you get some really interesting glares from everybody else. Then another day, you may run into the exact same circumstance, maybe not the same lady, but the exact same circumstance, but you've had a great day. You're relaxed, you're calm, you're not in a hurry. Nobody was hollering at you before you went in. Everything is cool. And you're relaxing, you're looking at that. And and the lady is going, well, you have to take this back. And you look over at the cashier and you say, hey, I've got her grocery bill. That is an alignment. You feel good. It's a positive thing that's happening there. There's no conflict. There's nothing in there that kicks into your mind, that part of your mind that says, I need to be judging. I need to be critical. I need to, be gruff or angry or frustrated or whatever. That part of your mind is calm, it's cool, it's collected. So your alternative solution to that was calmness, creativity, innovation, clairvoyance, compassion, and empathy, if you will. I'll take care of it. It's not a problem. Tell her to go ahead. And so your brain, your nervous system, and your body, when aligned with itself, feels good and is comfortable and everything is at peace. When it's not aligned, your judging part of your brain comes in. And this is what Shirzad Shamin, who is the guy who designed positive intelligence and the PQ quotient, says that there are certain how often you think in that negative side of your brain can get habitual, and it's okay to have it because, for example, if you had a child that was going to put her hand, a 2 year old or maybe a 4 year old, was going to put her hand on a hot stove, you don't take time as her leader, as her parent, to sit there and say, Marge, that is the stove, right? Yes, Daddy. If you put your hand on there, right now that stove is hot. You see it's red, it's hot, and you're going to burn your hand. And if you put your hand on there, you're going to get a burn and you're going to look at it and it's going to scar. And then every time after that, of course, you will learn not to touch the stove, right? You don't do that. Grab her hand and stop her, and you yell at her and say, don't touch that stove. It's hot, because you're trying to protect her. It's a needed part of our brain. The problem is it becomes habitual. It becomes part of that part of our life we begin to rely on too much, and we don't know how to stop it. And that becomes prevalent in just about everything we do. So you tend to see the cup half empty all the time instead of half full. And so what they have discovered through this neuroscience is you can stop that. You can take that thinking that isn't really relevant at this point in time, but you have habitually used it on even things that don't need to be used. And you can actually literally stop that process. You close your eyes, you take a deep breath, and you take about 10 or 15 seconds, two or three deep breaths with your eyes closed, and you focus your attention on your breath, blocking out everything else as much as possible. You can even do this with your eyes open. So, I mean, if you're driving, you wouldn't want to do that in road rage. But if you want to stop road rage, you can take 2 or 3 seconds, keep your eyes on the road, and focus on your breathing while you're driving down the road. What that does is that shuts off the neurons that are signaling you need to be critical, you need to do something, you need to jump in here, you need to show this person what to do, or whatever it is that's negative. It's a judgmental in nature. You can stop that. And when you've done with that breathing exercise, you're going to have a different thought about how you can handle it because your whole body has relaxed and the sensing perceptions have moved past the event, and you're now more calm. And so you can think, well, maybe that person's had a bad day. I'll just let them go on by. And you have a great day too from that point on. So at that point, you are aligned. Your calmness is aligned with the fact you are no longer threatened by an event, and you're calm and you're relaxed. So the judgments you make about what you're going to do is made with calmness. Versus if you don't do that, you may go, I'll show that asshole. And you go up and pull up, honk at him, and try to cut in front of him or something like that just to get even. Then you have a road rage incident. And today, those don't end well in a lot of cases. So that's kind of an example of what we mean and kind of a history. I've seen that this whole idea of moving from positive events and the positive thinking and the emotional intelligence into this now we can control our environment by aligning or taking control of our brain and aligning our body and our nervous system and our body to take us to a different calm, more relaxed, innovative, creative, non-threatening state than we were in at a particular moment. We can shut that moment down. It's not that we want to do that all the time because your brain is remembering the things that are dangerous to you, and they do call it up and react to it. But if it's a situation where you're frustrated with something, and there's no reason to be, it's not actually as big a problem as you think. When you shut that thinking down and allow your brain to go to the other side. So all the exercises, everything that Shamin's program teaches you uh, are these exercises that help you learn how to do that, and talks about neuroplasticity. The more you do them, it's like the bicep in your muscle. The more you feed it the right food and the more you pump it and exercise it correctly, the bigger and stronger it becomes. This is true about the brain. And so that's why I'm saying this singularly, the one thing we have not done for 4 decades with leaders, we have not taken the leader themselves and asked to see how they think, why they think, help them understand all of that. Much of this comes from your childhood, your influencers, and a bunch of other factors that you probably have never taken the time to go back and actually look at and think about. I think it's, therapy is something back in the 50s. You didn't ever want to tell anybody you went to therapy because you'd be considered nuts, and that was bad. That's not so much the case today. We finally discovered that therapy, in many ways, however it comes, whether it's, well, therapy doesn't come from coaching, there's a difference, but therapy in general, a counselor who's trained in therapy, and someone you can talk to, even like the 12-step approach and things like that, are all proven to help people. They're all proven to help people understand a little more about themselves and why they are the way they are. We have not done that in the leadership role. We take no time that I can remember have we spent talking to leaders about who they are, why they are, how they think, how that applies. Now, when you can stop that judgmental thinking and open your mind, when you learn how to do that and you become effective at that, what happens is as you begin to learn about emotional intelligence or any other aspect of these training that you get from about leadership, you begin to assimilate it. It allows it to come into your mind. You can clearly see it and focus it from a lot of different angles. Then you can internalize that. That means you can take everything you see, understand it the way it works for you. Okay? And that becomes personalizing it. You then personalize it so when you go back and show it, you may not show it like everybody else does, but your people who know you is authentic and sincere, and consequently they see it as empathy, for example. That's what happened with that leader in the chemical plant. His 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 people would never want him replaced. As gruff and as rough and tough as he sounded in his leadership, two things they knew. One, they could predict when he was really mad and when he wasn't. And they could also understood his tough love language, and they appreciated it. They knew he cared about them. The idea you send a note without a food basket saying, "Why the hell aren't you at work?" That is a judgmental factor. The fact you send that note with a basket full of food for you and the whole family while you're sick, and you do it consistently, that's empathy. It's understanding. What we have failed to do is teach leaders how to understand themselves well enough to do that effectively. And so people go to an empathy course, they come out of the course, they come back, they try to apply empathy, and it just doesn't come across right. It doesn't work, so they stop it, and everything stops, and there's no benefit to the class. And that's been shown in research report after research report. People do not transfer what they learn in these leadership training programs back to their environment. About 20-24% do. They have an impact on the employee and the organization. 75% don't. And we spend $166 billion a year average on leadership development. So kind of a long, drawn out history, but I think it's important you understand that this isn't something that just popped up. It's been an ongoing poke in the side for a long time. But just recently, we've discovered the why behind it, and that's in a lot of cases that's what really makes leadership tools effective is why they work. If you understand why they work, and more importantly, how you can personalize how they work. But you can't personalize them until um, you understand yourself well enough to take it in. Long story about why I decided to select positive intelligence as a tool you need to learn and master to be an effective Renaissance leader. The second question is how do I learn about this? How do I go about learning? I think it's probably best just to take you straight to the screen share.
Welcome to the Positive Intelligence or PQ Mental Fitness Program, your first step in boosting performance and happiness. Through the app, you'll learn how to build mental fitness and shift your mindset from negative to positive. You'll become more resilient, more productive, and more in control of your actions and emotions. In just 6 weeks, you can go from self-sabotage to self-mastery. You'll start by training your mind in the mental gym with daily challenges. But I have no time, you say. Don't worry. Each day requires only 15 minutes of practice, and you can do it anytime, anywhere. First, you'll build up your self-command muscle. Next, you'll strengthen your saboteur-interceptor muscle to move beyond your self-limiting beliefs. Finally, you'll get to flex your sage muscle and learn how to turn challenges into opportunities. Each week, a 1-hour video will set context for your daily challenges. A certified PQ coach is available to support your mental fitness journey. And you can join a weekly discussion group for additional support. Ready to shift from self-sabotage to self-mastery? Enroll today and start to build powerful habits for greater performance, relationships, and wellness.
So you can see how that works. So that should answer your question. I'll put links, like I said, to being able to reach these people. Phenomenal program, 500,000 sample size in companies all over the world, all of them showing great responses to this. Some companies are doing it for all of their employees, which what you'll find if you watch my Renaissance program, that would be a Renaissance leader who's taking that approach to this process. So the third question is, how does that fit inside of your Renaissance Leadership Odyssey? And it's not hard to see that right now we're struggling with leadership everywhere in the world, from governments down to small businesses. And it's impacting production, it's impacting people's lives, it's impacting societies in general, it divides people, etc. So when you think about positive intelligence and the ability for you to stop being controlled by your saboteurs and manage your mind according to the SAGE process, which is the ability to recognize the problem, shut it down, think about different ways to approach it, take some action on clearing it up in a general sense. You have the ability to therefore align your body with your environment and be able to control that environment a lot more. When you can do that, you're perceived kind of like those employees perceive a referent leader: positive, open, caring, approachable, can learn from. When you set that kind of environment up and a person has the ability to learn how to do that, what happens is employees empower their leader. The leader doesn't demand the power. The employees empower the leader. Now, think about this. In this world right now, we're going to be exposed to something that's changing so rapidly and on a continual basis, we have a hard time controlling it. And think about that kind of a concept. Think about AI out of control in this world. What you have is a very small percentage. If you would have to put a period, and behind that period, a large number of O's or zeros, and before you reach that one, to know the number of people that are actually going to be controlling that part of your life. Leaders are people, well, let me put it another way. Employees want leaders to lead them. They want to put their trust in leaders. They want to know the leader has their welfare at heart. The largest percentage of people out there are not going to be the people who control things. It's going to be the very small percent. But those people who follow those leaders represent the vast majority of people in the world. And leaders have an innate accountability and responsibility to care for and take care of those people as part of their leadership role in the Renaissance Leadership Program. They are building a community, a family, if you will, even. So the change about leadership role and the concept has a lot to do with helping people stay out of those saboteur states in their mind and fearful of things like AI and any other thing that's going to be hitting us that we never suspected. And we need leaders who can calm the waters, be able to clear our minds, help us stay clairvoyant, help us stay focused, help us stay positive, help us stay energized towards finding the correct solution that takes care and helps all of those people who you lead. Because again, you are such a small group of people that is in control of everything that impacts them. Such a small group. That's a big responsibility to put people's shoulders without giving them the personal attention and help to learn about themselves so that they can accept that role if they're right for it. And if they're not right for it, that's okay. They can decide not to be right, and they can then continue to be a follower. But those leaders have a much bigger responsibility than producing a product and getting it out there. They are accountable for the stabilization and the cool mindset of all of the followers that are following, the 99% of the world that are following them. Think about it that way. If you have AI going wild, and think about the number of, you can count on one hand the number of organizations or people that are going to be controlling that AI process. Now, do you want a leader in there who lacks the skill sets we were just talking about? That maybe it stays focused in that judgmental and their saboteurs are working constantly to keep other people from knowing what they know, to keep the employees not transparently communicating what could happen to them with AI or how it's going to impact their jobs or anything else. And then not come up with any kind of solutions that is caring for their employees, but really just focused on profit share or money. So, because if you push hard enough, those people rebel. That's where everybody just finally says, I've got nothing to lose. We're out of here. Everybody just leaves the company. They get out, they leave, they're gone. Their history. Those 1% cannot manage that corporation. They cannot run a corporation. So, let alone manage it, they cannot run it enough to have something to manage. That was the formulation of unions to help balance that out a little bit, that sense of harm that kills trust. If you don't have a balance in the ability to harm between those who work for and those who provide the resources for, if you don't have that balance, then you don't have the trust. If you don't have the trust, you can't lead. So, yes, positive intelligence is in there. That's the role it plays because I'm asking organizations, whether they're a multi billion dollar international conglomerate to a one restaurant, uh, Main Street business in Main Street America, I'm asking that you change your leadership role and philosophy to understand you are not wanting these people to just deliver a product. You have a sense of responsibility for their well-being. You have a sense of understanding how valuable they are to your success. And that every time you send one out the door and try to replace them with somebody else, you have not acquiesced or given up that responsibility. You just have prolonged the ability to cope with it in the future. It will rise again if you continue to behave the way you are. You can never find the same amount of people who are just like you. You're 1% of the population. You are not going to find people like you all of the time. So the onus is on you to be able to understand how to lead people. And that means that you're accountable for them. You're responsible for their well being as much as you are having them attain a particular profit goal or a sales goal or a quality goal or a service goal. The heart of that organization is in those people. You are that nervous system. You are that piece that aligns the organization with the workforce in a sage-based world, an aligned world that keeps things calm and collective and smooth and everybody excited and enjoying their company. And yes, that means you have to bring much of that in-house and learn to do it in-house so you can start doing it with people you know, who you've worked with, who know you, who know your culture, who know your environment. You outsource all of this to consultants, to coaches, to other people. I don't know. I'm not saying they can't play a role. Just don't send them away and don't uh, outsource the responsibility and the accountability to build that infrastructure of quality leadership that builds a community, not just delivers a product, but builds a community within your organization and one that has accountability and a sense of responsibility to everybody who works for you. Count on you. They want you to lead, but they don't want you to forget them. They don't want you to devalue them. So that is the role that this positive intelligence, it starts by getting the right leader in the right place. And that has to happen inside the organization, controlled by the people who need that kind of leader, controlled by people who think like a Renaissance leader, who behave like a Renaissance leader, who can put a Renaissance leadership team in place and pushes positive intelligence quotient all the way down to your lowest employee in the organization should have a chance at this. Because when they do, they can turn around and look at you differently. They can see your commitment to their health and welfare and their livelihood and their security and their survival for that matter. That's why this is important to the Renaissance Leadership Program. And when we talk about intelligent, I will talk to you about emotional intelligence with as much passion as I do positive intelligence. In fact, what happens with positive intelligence to emotional intelligence, let's take empathy. You go learn a class at empathy. You don't have any positive intelligence training. You go learn a class at empathy. You go there for an hour or 4 hours or a week, whatever it is. You come back and you try to apply what you learned, but you're not empathetic. You don't even feel it. You don't even understand it. You know the words, you saw the examples, you know how you should behave. You go back and try that, and people have never seen you try that for the first time. And they just look at you like you're nuts, and it doesn't work. And so people stop it. And that's why you only have 24 to 25% of the people you send off training having any kind of behavioral change in the people that work for them based on the training they learned. Positive intelligence does a very interesting thing, in my opinion, at least from my experiences personally. It helps you open up your mind to assimilate, which means take in this information. You may seek it even and take it in. It opens your mind to taking in more and more. You assimilate this information. More importantly, you know who you are. You know what the issues are. When you shut down that saboteur thinking process and open your mind to a more innovative, clairvoyant, creative thinking process, you begin to see how something like that empathy you learn, how that works for you, who you are. You learn how to apply it within yourself. You internalize empathy in your language and in who you are. So then you personalize that, I don't show empathy like other people show empathy. There's some people who ooze empathy, almost sickening to me. But then on the other side of that coin, being disruptive and harmful to people is just worse than that. That balance is, how can I show empathy and how can my employees understand how I'm going to show empathy? So, another reason for that. So, let's move on to the next question. And that is how you can find that. And I've already shown you that. We answered that question going into um, the program. We'll send you the notices. Now, what I have done is I am done a couple of podcasts, and I have one podcast coming up with a couple of people who are certified to teach positive intelligence. So I can recommend these people to you. I feel comfortable with these people. Otherwise, you can actually go directly to positiveintelligence.com and you can contact somebody, and they will put you into contact with somebody near you in that process. So you have that opportunity, whether you're going to do this virtually or whether you're going to do it hybrid or whether you're going to do it full on, come in and work with the organization. What we try to do, or what I am trying to do, there is no we, there is I. What I am trying to do is, starting this summer, engage someone in uh, taking on this Renaissance leadership project and showing the value and the benefit. It's just going to be a phenomenal change in companies. How do you do that? You don't try to change the company all at once. I mean, even if I ran into that CEO that's not thinking in the saboteur size, but the sage size, and says, "Look, I want to run this all the way down through my whole corporation," I would probably say it's probably not a good idea. Let's take a breather. Let's sit back and think, where should we start? Let's take uh, a group of people who's not in trouble and a group of people who are not exceeding, or maybe you might want to take them, I don't know. A group, they they could be energized and appreciative of the help and would be embracing it and moving forward. Start with that group. And let's communicate that we're doing this to the whole company. And let's watch that group. And that group will perform better. And when they do, it's time to inoculate the whole company at that time. You may want to do it in stages so it's not disruptive. You have all kinds of external factors you have to remember or you have to align yourself with on an ongoing basis. Leaders have to learn how to do that effectively. And one of those things is not to do the old thing, let's push it all down. Then if it fails, well, the process's fault. No, it's not. It's probably the leader's fault. But they're not going to recognize that until they're able to clear their mind and see it clearly. However, if you start on a slower basis, a small scale uh, test project, you will look. I do thoroughly encourage. I do this and going to recommend this in like quarters, and like the first quarter, I would love to see the executive team take up 6 weeks of positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, and interpersonal communication training and development over a 6 to 10 week program. Now, why all at once? Well, because you can't really separate them. You need to be a pretty good communicator to understand how to accept some of this stuff and use some of this stuff. So you can view it like a college course. You have a semester, you're taking 3 courses simultaneously. You're taking positive intelligence, interpersonal communication effectiveness, and emotional intelligence all at the same time. All at the same time. So you Each of them, you're going to have a full week for 6 to 10 weeks, depending on what you take. Now, you can take them separately and then integrate them, but you will be better off if you take them effective. It's one reason why I've decided to extend my interpersonal communication course out from 2 days a week for a month to almost a month and a half to something like 12 weeks. Uh, so it goes a little bit further than that. It's almost a semester of work. But you're going to also be doing personal intelligence and emotional intelligence simultaneously. So as a leadership group, as you're getting this information simultaneously, you're going to be sensing a lot more strength as you go along. It's not as demanding as it sounds, but it does take a little more energy and a little more effort. So you don't want to just try to push this down the organization. You're liable to paralyze your organization. But in the pieces that we're talking about over a 6 month or a year period, your organization is going to expand immensely and engagement's going to improve, satisfaction's going to improve. If you start with the senior team, you can get them going and you can start another project with the next level of leaders and then work that down all the way to the employee level. So may have several projects going at one time. This can be very beneficial if it's coordinated right. You get the right leader coordinated. You want to have somebody inside the organization responsible and capable of doing that kind of a project on an ongoing basis. And then you want to sustain that after you leave, or after the project is sort of, you've got maintenance processes the same way you want a piece of equipment to work for a long time. You got to maintenance it. You have to maintenance your organization same way. Reassess, come back in, new people have a route to go a certain way that you need to figure out how to handle new people. All that again, you can't shove them off to consultants. We're going to try to teach everybody the same thing, and that's not an effective way because everybody is not the same. That after you go through a positive intelligence program. Positive intelligence is not a program that's consistently teaching everybody the same thing. Everybody does have saboteurs and everybody can use the sage. Everybody may not use the sage. Everybody may not do that the same way. This consultant has to be able to manage that positive intelligence program to fit your organization and to build a process to inoculate the rest of your organization to the process. But the benefits will be phenomenal. We'll begin to change how employees think. It may even change some significant things like the financial gap between executives and employees. It may help improve the whole concept of diversity because when you're going through interpersonal communication, you're going to learn about where you're going to be void in certain areas. When you hire everybody that's like you don't see things exactly like you ought to see them. So it takes a little time for those processes to sink in, but it's a very valuable, sustainable tool after that. And most of all, it's going to prepare you for all of those things that's going to hit you that are so complex that you don't want somebody who is not a uh, what I call an authentic leader is someone who is real, who is capable of handling all of these complex issues because they have been trained. We have spent time training them and helping them understand themselves and how to handle these issues. So that's pretty much it I know this is an exceptionally long question and answer video, but a lot of important points here about the future, your future as a leader, and your future as a corporation, and future of communities and society, and a whole bunch of things are going to be impacted by this paradigm shift. It is so critically needed. It's going to be tough to do. It's a Definitely uphill battle because there's so much money involved on the other side of it. Pushing back, you remember you have a multi-billion-dollar industry that I'm telling you probably hasn't delivered anything for the multi-billion dollars, but they're going to want to keep that multi-billion dollar business coming in. Now they can jump into this. They can come buy me out. I welcome you to come buy my idea out and go implement it. I'm sure you'll make millions, maybe even billions on this project once it's implemented right. But right now, I'm betting on companies. Now, on small businesses, you don't have to worry about that so much because you don't have the funds or the resources at this point in time. But if you're going to scale, this is going to open your eyes so that when you scale up, you don't lose sight of the important things in your organization like we have in the past. So that's the overview, the question and answers on positive intelligence and how it fits into with the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey concept and program. And I thank you for listening. If you think this is a valuable video, then you might want to share that link that you have to this video within anybody else you think is important and you think might benefit from the video. Uh, Again, we'll try to keep this into chapters as I go through the editing. It'll be probably a week or so before I'm able to edit this down into chapters. So you may have to watch it all the way through. I don't know. One day, maybe not. Maybe I can get it done in a day. I don't know. We'll see. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you take it to heart. I hope you take it and run like hell and change your organization and create a renaissance for this era. You will be a hero if you do. Thanks a lot for watching.